I'm Anthony Wright, and I'm your co-host today on the Living Conversation with,
Adam Dietz.
and we would like to welcome you back to this fourth section. Um, and this show is about public philosophy. Um, and I think one of the things you said earlier in the show, Adam, was, and or I don't remember who said it. It's kind of like I experience, and I think you do, we experience philosophy like the sun.
Mm.
And would you talk a little bit about this when you were in China? Somebody said, "Oh, why should we study Confucius?"
It was a story from our mentor. He talked about
Oh,
how
Doctor Wu said this.
one of his friend's sons was complaining about or a friend of the family or something like that. Why should we talk about Confucius? Why should we study Confucius? It's the same with all good philosophy. The reason why we study good philosophy is because it can enhance our life right now. So Confucius, you can still feel the influence of Confucius in daily life today. Just
Right.
like even though he lived a long time ago, you can still feel his influence. Just like even though the sun is very far away, you can still feel its warmth.
Yep.
This is
Yep.
why
Yep.
this is why we I think you mentioned before, Buddha said, try it. I don't take my word for it. Try it.
Yeah.
All
Exactly.
philosophy is for you, the listener, to experience. So we want to know your experience. Maybe you've had many experiences before where philosophy enriched your life. We want to know. Or maybe you're trying new ideas, new methods, and they're influencing your life very well. This is wisdom, trial and error. What works for you? What
Right.
worked for Confucius was to have harmony of human beings. He analyzed and figured out this is what's great for society. He learned that from the ancient sage kings. So all the philosophers, they examined issues of life and gave ideas of what was the best way to enhance our life. This is a good philosophy.
And to me, it's really not a luxury. It's more of the basic food of our existence, you
And it
know?
comes natural. We want to do better. We want to learn better. We want to
Right.
grow. We want to have a better life. Is the most natural thing there is.
Right. And I think just to mention, there was a clip that I have of Deepak Chopra, who is a holistic physician, and he talks about the ontological primitive. Now, that's a big word, ontological, ontos. And there's two words in philosophy that I talk to my students about, ontology and epistemology. And epistemology is the study of language, epistemology, and ontology is the study of reality. And Deepak Chopra spoke about the ontological primitive, which is the basis of reality. And he said, in the West, the ontological primitive is matter, stuff. Okay. And yet, through that, the quantum physicists are getting more and more and more towards this idea of the cosmos being a quantum field. And Deepak Chopra spoke about the ontological primitive in the East is that reality is consciousness. So it's one of the places that I've been studying is this idea about the quantum field being the whole cosmos is conscious and it shows up as Anthony, but Anthony isn't separate. Adam isn't separate. Um, we're, and let me offer you, you had asked before about um, some ideas from complexity science. And there is this, I'm going to draw on the whiteboard here uh, a map of Britain. It's not showing up very well. Let me just, okay, that's better. Um, and the question is, this is the coastline paradox. And the question is, how long is the coastline of Britain? And for those of you listening online, you can follow us along. And okay, I'm going to measure the coastline of Britain with 100-kilometer rulers. Okay, so you see those dotted lines. Well, why stop at a 100-kilometer ruler? Why not go with a 50-kilometer ruler? Okay, well, we get more. Why? Because the 50-kilometer rulers go into the indentations. Okay. So the coastline paradox goes like this. The shorter the unit of measurement that's used, so why stop at 50 kilometers? Why stop at a meter? Why not go to a micrometer? So the shorter the unit that is measured, used to measure, the longer gets that which is measured until when the unit of measurement reaches zero, that which is measured becomes infinite. So I offer to you and to my students this idea, this analogy, when we stop making an arbitrary distinction, and it's an arbitrary distinction. This is actually what the Buddha woke up to. Um, when I stop making an arbitrary distinction between you and me, we become one being. This idea of separateness is an illusion. There's Alan Watts talks about a story from Zen Buddhism called the mosquito biting the iron bowl. The mosquito has to bite, and the iron bowl can't be bitten. And it's this idea of when we desire something, we separate ourselves from it. And that separation is what causes suffering. It's an illusion. So that was a tremendous realization for me. And it assisted me into going into a flow state. Because I'll tell you another very quick story. I used to go sit zazen in the Minnesota Zen Center with Dane and Katagiri Roshi. And we would sit, on Wednesday nights, and he would talk about the Blue Cliff record and so forth. But before the lecture, we would sit zazen, and I noticed his energy, his body affect, and it was a deep calmness. And then he got done with the sitting, and in Buddhist terms, it's called shikantaza, just sitting. But then he stopped sitting, and then he was giving a lecture. And a very curious thing that I noticed, that his energy didn't change. Then he got done with his lecture, and he was up talking amongst the various people in the room. And by God, his energy didn't change. Then I had a breakthrough. He was still meditating. He was still in the flow state. There was no separated Katagiri. So, and each of us, I propose, and I've written about this and it's on my website, goes into the zone every day, doing something that we love. We forget all about ourselves. To me, we don't value it in the West, but when we're in that flow state, that's when we are one with everything. There's no separation. And to me, that's what would be called enlightenment. Because what is it like to have that happen all the time? Right? Does this make sense, Adam?
Yeah, I think it makes sense to me. When I hear that, I think of a few things, but the one that comes to mind is Lao Tzu chapter 1
Right.
talks about that there's being and non-being.
Oh,
So
yes.
I feel like right now what you're talking about is the non-being. And those are two sides of the same coin,
Yes.
being and non-being. So I feel like right now you're talking about non-being. So in non-being, how to practice this? We practice this by letting our mind settle. When we let our mind settle, then we can be in non-being. When we are in non-being, Lao Tzu chapter 1 says we can contemplate the origin of all things, the mother of all things, the origin of all things.
Okay.
This is non-being. Being is the path of all things. So being is how Tao comes into this world in a certain path, in a certain direction. So this is you were talking about the non-being, that we are all united in non-being. We are also I have my skin, I have myself, I have my face. So I am one unique manifestation of Tao coming into being. So this is like two sides of the same coin.
Right.
We all have our non-being, we all have our being. We all have our heavenly nature, we all have our life. For Confucius, this is like we all have our heavenly nature as a human being is humanity. So we all have humanity, and then we all have our life, our relationships, how we act, how we enter into this world. So this entire universe has put Adam in this space to fulfill my set of responsibilities and relationships. All time and space is uniquely in this atom, just like all time and space is uniquely in Anthony, just like all time and space is uniquely in every listener. The only you can massage out and harmonize the events of your life. Only you can act in your relationships with humanity, loyalty to yourself, empathy towards other people, the practice of humanity, sincerity, humility. Only you, that is your destiny of all time and space in that area that only we can fulfill.
Right. And this is what is the difference between heaven's destiny and fate. You don't feel swept around, oh, I'm this separate person that the world is against me. Oh my gosh. Well, it's real curious. And I'm experiencing being and non-being at the same time.
Good.
So it's outside of time and space. Um, anyway,
Yeah, we can experience in our own mind all of time and space. We can unite with Tao. We have everything has Tao in it. We have Tao in it. Tao is beyond words. Tao is beyond time and space. We can experience this. We can experience being and non-being.
but that's what happens in the zone. That's what happens in the flow state. But I also have to say, there is, because I've been looking at this, within the flow state, you need ethics and you also need compassion and tranquility, which is this grounded idea, but also a flexibility to allow the awareness to go from the local place of Adam and Anthony to what is the case for being aware of everyone who's listening or watching. Because it's interesting that I can attend to you who are listening and watching as attending in the future. And I can feel that. And then, well, why would we stop there? Why not attend to the community and to the country and to the planet and to the cosmos? But that's this idea of having flexibility at different levels because the patterns repeat. And again, I want to invite people to to check out that Hunting the Hidden Dimension um, uh, show on Nova. It's about an hour, but you won't regret seeing it. But it really does play into my study, and it sounds like into your study also, Adam, of Chinese philosophy. Before we're done here, do you have any final words for our listeners for this time?
Well, two things. One, my final thought on this topic is that this word earlier for principle is that we are all a pattern of how the Tao has come into existence. This character, Chinese character, is like the veins on jade or the branches of a tree. All nature follows has this pattern. So before Anthony was talking about fractal pattern. So we can see this in nature. This is like the Tao has entered into the chat. The Tao has entered into the world in this way, in this
Yeah.
pattern.
This is the character Li.
Yeah, yeah. And so that's my one final thought about what we've been discussing today. And I just want to continue to encourage everyone to make this the living conversation, right? That means it's not a living conversation if it doesn't enter into life. Our mentor talked about how philosophy needs to be in practice. Philosophy needs to be enter into daily life. So we should all hopefully be looking at our daily life. How is wisdom entering into our life in our daily life? So we would love to hear from you in any format. You can find me online in so many different social media areas, mostly under the way between on TikTok, YouTube Shorts, Instagram, basically everything. The main platform that I mostly use is Substack. So you can find me there. But the reason why I mentioned that is because we want this to be the living conversation. So we want to know how these things are entering into all of our lives, what things, the more experience we can look at and examine of philosophy, the more alive the conversation will be.
Does this make sense? Does this make any sense to you guys who are listening? To you guys and ladies, please let us know. Um, and I'm on theonaut.com, theonaut.com, and there is a comment section there. So um, please let us know how it goes. Well, thank you so much for attending. I'm Anthony Wright,
And I'm Adam Dietz.
and we have been having the living conversation. We'll see you next time.